Prescriptive grammar. The term prescriptive grammar refers to a set of norms or rules governing how a language should or should not be used, rather than describing the ways in which a language is actually used. So, this concept of prescriptive grammar is very deep rooted, especially in English language. It is thought that whenever you have to use grammar, you have to follow some authorities which prescribe the use of language in a certain way, right? So, for English speakers, for long centuries, the tradition of using language was prescriptivism, right? So it is now contrasted with descriptivism. Prescriptivism suggests that the way you should use language, right? A prescriptivist has a certain approach to using language. The language has to be used in the light of the use of authorities, right? The way they use language. So there are always some correct or incorrect thing. You use language whether it's correct or it's incorrect. And also called normative grammar and prescriptivism. So the discussion under this topic is prescriptivism. Whereas in descriptive grammar, we simply see the way language has been described, not the way it should be used. So this is the main difference between prescriptive grammar and descriptive grammar. Though we cannot fully be away or get rid of this prescriptivism, because this is to some extent is very important, and especially for academic purpose it's still in use. However, under the guidance of descriptivism, certain changes have taken place in this age-old tradition. In a prescriptive grammar, there is right or wrong language, rules of good or proper usage, which dictate what is good grammar and what is bad grammar. For example, she does not know him. Obviously, it's good grammar. But if somebody says she don't know him, it is incorrect. Cannot be it a version of some dialect in English. We know that in certain dialects of English, the third person singular is not used. E or es is not added to the verb when the subject is third person singular. And there are many other rules which are still followed. Besides these, there are other differences of the following types. For example, case of pronoun. Never use an object case after the verb to be. If you say it is me, it is not considered correct. You will have to say it is I, because you need to bring after the verb to be a nominative case of the pronoun, right? It's me is incorrect. Instead, you should say it is I. Similarly, Mary runs faster than me. After then, there should have been a nominative case, so it should have been Mary runs faster than I run, because the verb thought to be implied here. Similarly, don't say who are you talking to, because who here is referring to object. So say whom are you talking to. Similarly, never end a sentence with a preposition. So the previous sentence would be considered incorrect. Whom are you talking to? To whom are you talking? It should be the correct sentence. Don't use ain't. Ain't is not considered a formal, it's an informal, so don't use I ain't do this. Don't use seen as the past tense of see. In some dialect, however, seen is used as the past tense of see. So for example, instead of saying I saw it, the speaker of that dialect would say I seen it. Don't use contractions like I've, instead say I have, or it's, instead say it is. So the informal English or prescriptive English. These constructions shouldn't be used. Similarly, don't use sentence fragment, right? Nowadays, it's a tradition in writing, especially when you are in creative writing, you use word or phrases representing complete thought. Don't use dangling participle. Dangling participle, for example, you can see coming to college, there were many tall trees. So this sentence, in this sentence, coming to college is a dangling participle because coming is not attached to any subject of reference. So this sentence will be considered or is considered incorrect in prescriptive rules. Instead, you say coming to college, I saw many tall buildings, etc. Many of these rules are essentially taken from Latin. So prescriptivism has taken its root from Latin language or Latin grammar. Latin was the classical language known for educated people and one regarded as model for all languages. It was considered, rather still people argue that it's very logical. Latin is a very logical language, and so its rules are also very logical, and they should be taught to children to learn logic as well. So however, there is no reason why English should follow the Latin rules, because English has its own rules of use. The Englishman has English as his or her native language. So the way Englishman uses language, for example, if the Englishman uses double negative, so why it is incorrect? It has to be correct, right? So in prescriptive grammar tradition, we have to follow certain rules which have been given by the authorities of grammar, that use this and don't use that, right? For example, English has no case ending for nouns except in genitive case. So why should the Englishman follow case? For example, the noun John, it may be subject or it may be object, right? Or it may be object of a preposition. John remains John. However, when it comes into the possessive case or genitive case, we add apostrophe s, except that there is no change in the form of the word. So why should Englishman follow case? Whereas in Latin language, certain suffix is added. We have studied a lot in morphology these suffixes, so you can think of or go back to that area, right? So when we talk about prescriptivism, we should keep it in mind that prescriptivism gives us certain rules to follow, whereas languages have their own rules.